A bar in my town used to host live bands all the time, until one of the neighbors complained about the noise. It turns out the zoning rules didn't allow them to have live music and they almost got shut down. The bar owner read over said zoning rules and notices that the wording forbade them to have live music indoors, but they could have it outdoors. So they moved the stage to the patio section, where it would be even louder for the neighbors, and still be illegal. They still have live music sometimes, but not nearly as often as they used to. Don't want to push their luck, I guess. I answer a call in the lull of my shift and the first thing out of her mouth is, "You forgot my appetizer." Ignoring her rudeness, I'm pretty positive this wasn't the case, seeing as how we're only doing takeout right now and I have a lot of extra time to double-check each order. But giving her the benefit of the doubt, I ask for her name and if she remembers what was on the order. Still being unnecessarily angry, she tells me her name and that's when I'm positive that I never took this order. I calmly ask her if she's sure she's calling the correct restaurant because we have no record of her order in our system. "Isn't this the Chinese restaurant on X Street?" We're a Thai restaurant and I must have heard it called Chinese one too many times because I said no it isn't. Maybe next time make sure you're calling the right restaurant before you start idioting about an honest mistake in the middle of a pandemic. Probably a little petty of me. But feels good, man. Not the best storyteller but here goes. I worked at a national grocery store chain for a couple years and saw this one day. I was stocking the shelves and made my way to the cracker aisle when I saw this lady sitting on one of the motorized carts. She was opening every different flavor of cracker, trying a few, and then putting them back on the shelf. Ma'am, I'm gonna have to ask you to stop opening the product before you pay for it. Her, no, you have too many choices and I need to know what they taste like before I buy them. I didn't want to argue with her, it had been a long day already. I went and got my manager and explained the situation. I also pulled the stuff she opened off the shelf. Now she hadn't left yet so the manager went and spoke to her and got her to agree to leave after she paid for what was in her cart. Manager let her get up to the register after waiting in a long line and began putting all of the boxes she opened on the belt. Her, "What is this? I'm not buying this." Manager, "You can either buy it or I call the police and report you for shoplifting." Her, "Good luck with that." Manager has the police called and after they check the cameras and watch her do it she gets slapped with the shoplifting charges and she still has to pay for everything she opened. Her total was even higher after that because they saw everything she opened and not just the crackers. I wish I could have seen her face. Edit, I rolled the opened items to the register for my manager and saw that exchange. I didn't physically witness anything after the police got there since that stuff was above my pay grade. I heard the outcome from my manager after the fact. I own a mail shop, you've probably seen 100 like mine. We have mailboxes we rent and we rented one, we'll just call him box 109. 109 wasn't a nightmare customer, but he also was never pleasant. He always accused us of changing the lock on his box because his key didn't work, inevitably he just wasn't using it correctly and I'm aware of how crazy this sounds. So he closes his box. We are required under the United States Postal Service to hold mail for 6 months and then we can return to sender or send to the customer's last known address. We are not required to provide this mail free of charge in the interim. Usually if it's just a piece or two or something we know is important, we'll call the customer and hand it over with a smile. Well, 109 tells my employee that he is expecting some mail from the DMV and he'd like her to tell him when it's here. Time goes by, we're now at month 6 and I am getting ready to return to sender. My employee sees the stack, mostly stuff from the IRS, and says, "Oh, let me call him." I say, "Okay, that's awfully nice of you, go for it." So she calls. He comes in and proceeds to berate her for calling him for mail he doesn't want. Apparently the letters from the IRS are just annoyance letters he intends to ignore. He leaves before I get the chance to kick him out, too slow on the draw. It's now been 8 months since his box closed. Guess what came for him the other day? His stimulus check. My employee looked torn and I told her he said, "Everything from the IRS is just crap. Return it to sender. We're just doing exactly what he requested." I gave her the honor of doing it. TLDR, mailbox holder berates us for nicely holding his mail after his box is closed. Instructs us not to call him for IRS mail as it's all junk. We return his stimulus check. Edit, my first ever award. Thank you, kind stranger. This revenge was not intentional, but it was truly satisfying. In our office we had that typical problem, food thief. I ran out of milk faster than I should have, one of my 2 yogurts once disappeared, my piece of pie was bitten, numerous cases. I bought a small fish tank with a macropodous fish. He was a predator, so I bought him some bloodworms. They were frozen and portioned into nice cherry-colored candy-sized bricks. Can you already see where it's going? I have thrown away the box, so they were in the inner package with no identification marks. I kept them in the fridge and every day I took half of a brick. And one glorious day I found out that the fresh brick that I was going to chop in half, had its corner bitten off. The clearest human teeth markings I have ever seen. I never knew who that was, but I imagine how that person takes a bite of a candy, feels it melting in their mouth, wonders what is that taste and texture and why isn't it sweet, spits it and sees these were bloodworms. Oh, how satisfying. I made sure to tell everyone in the office about it, loudly. It gives me a huge grin every time I remember it. This happened years ago when I was still relatively new. Still worth a read I think, and I wanted to share. I work for one of the many cable/internet providers of the US. Now, I only assist accounts for a specific region of the country. Outside of my area I would transfer the customer. Had a customer with multiple homes, I helped them with the one in my region. We had some laughs and it was a really good call. Transfer them to the right region to finish the rest of their account management and didn't think again about it for a couple of weeks. Done this literally hundreds of times, never once heard back about it. Until during team meetings we will look over the group's surveys and I get to mine and it's this page-long review. Normally these things read like courteous and knowledgeable and that would be about it. This one is a book. I recognize the name, and read this whole story about talking to me. Then I transferred them to some high-pressure sales pitch hotline about home awnings for deck and patio shade. Lol, what? I know it's my call and it has my name on the survey. But I transferred them to the Southeast Division for my internet/cable company, right? I go back to my desk, go in the phone and a project code. Call the number that was labeled in my shortcuts for Southeast. And I get this MF telling me about affordable home awnings with payment plans. Oh, I felt like turning to dust and blowing away in the wind. Guys, I never heard a peep and was doing it the same way for so long. It's fixed now. So this happened when I was 8. I was out playing with my friends. There were a lot of kids. Anyway, me and my best friend at the time left the area where all the kids were playing and went to the street. There was a man in one of the phone boxes and when he saw us he started to make funny faces. Us being kids, made funny faces back. This continued for a few minutes. Then he got off the phone and approached us and said, "Hey, I have some sweets at my house for you too." Again, us being kids got excited at the thought of free sweets. As we're walking towards him, he's in the middle of the road and we're on the edge of the pavement. I think he began to realize that we were hesitating. I turned to my friend, we both speak a different language, and said, "I don't think we should be going with this man," and she said, "But free sweets," all in a different language. When he noticed our hesitation he then said, "I also have chocolates." My friend looked at me excited and said, "Let's go." I then said to her, in a different language, "I don't think we should go," and we stopped walking towards him. Then he said, "I also have money for you too." Then I turned to her and just said, "Run." And we both ran back to where all the kids are. I never saw him again and never mentioned this to my parents up until a few years ago. I'm now 21. I always wonder sometimes what would have happened if we had been enticed by this. Scary. With increased work from home, I was starting to be more aware of the lack of bandwidth in my apartment, sharing internet between myself and my fiancée simultaneously. I decided to run a speed test and found I was capping out at 90 megabits per second on 400 megabits per second internet. I called my ISP and they agreed that something was wrong. A cable technician came out to try to resolve the problem, and I decided to troubleshoot with him after he stated his meter read 500 megabits per second when he connected to the modem. After asking what cable he used to connect from the modem to his meter, he told me he used a different Ethernet cable than what was going to my router. Suddenly everything clicked. I removed my existing Ethernet cable from my modem to router, swapped in a new Cat5e cable, and boom! 480 megabits per second down and 23 up. As it turns out, I've been using a Cat3 4-wire Cat5 cable for years and being capped at 100 megabits per second while paying for faster internet. DL, Doctor, I used a Cat3 4-wire Cat5 cable for my connection to my router and wasted the higher internet speeds I was paying for the last 7 years. Edit, clarifying types of cables that caused my issues. When I was back in 7th grade, I had this horrible math teacher. A few examples of what she did was take my Kindle when I read after I finished a test, when other kids were also reading, wanting me to come by at the end of school to pick it up from the front office, taking away my calculator when I wiped it off with my shirt as it had eraser shavings on it, because it was distracting me. What? She even wrote a racist comment on a Hispanic friend of mine's test when she returned it after grading, not going to give more info, including the phrase written, because it would let you just Google it, and get the school name. She was a overall horrible person. And hashtag X200B. Well, here comes my part of the story. So back in 7th grade, I drank a ton of water, just because I was very thirsty frequently. And by extension had to use the restroom a bunch. One day I guess she had enough, because she said that without a doctor's note, I could no longer go to the restroom during her class because it disturbed the class, and I also believe she thought I was skipping class, cheating or something, which is super unlike me because I love math, and relating to the cheating on tests, I didn't even have a phone at that age. Lamau. So I don't know how she thought I was pulling that off. So, what me and my family did is that we went to the doctor's office, told my doctor the situation. He's super nice, and he laughs and writes me a note. So the next day, I asked to go to the restroom and she says something along the lines of, unless you have a doctor's note, you can't use the restroom. I promptly hand her my doctor's note, and leave the classroom. And hashtag X200B. Kinda anticlimactic, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Smile. Edit, add more info. This may be pushing Rule 6 a little, but this happened when my grandfather was growing up in rural Kansas in the 40s and 50s, and is one of my favorite stories from him. Story. When my grandpa was growing up, he didn't have electricity, this being rural Kansas. What they did have was a wood-burning stove. At one point, firewood that great-grandfather had been storing began to disappear. A thief was afoot. My great-grandfather, getting tired of the firewood disappearing, hatches a plan. Great-grandfather takes some of the logs and drills them out, leaving a cavity. He then puts some gunpowder in the cavities and plugs the holes to hide his handiwork. That night he tells my grandpa that he would bring in the firewood. Of course he knows what logs he's messed with. Now this is the funny part, and I wish I knew how embellished it was, but stranger things have happened. The next day great-grandfather is walking into town and comes across a gentleman also headed into town, and they get to talking. It turns out the gentleman is going into town to make a purchase, the item he seeks, a new stove. He says to my great-grandfather, "I don't know what they're putting in the coal these days, but it destroyed my stove." No wood ever went missing again. A little backstory: I work in a kitchen for a private company. I count as kitchen crew, so basically my job consists of doing whatever I'm ordered to, mostly dishes. I don't mind. Anyway, our chef asked me to help him move the barbecue yesterday. It was heavy, and after we finished the job he did that thing parents do, when their kids are walking behind them, to hold their hands, basically held his hands out low. My thought process was, "Mkay dude, you're weird, but I'm not going to leave you hanging," and go and proceed to hold his hand. He wanted a low five. I died. My cousin is supposed to be sleeping over at my house. My parents are sleeping, so he wanted to go visit his girlfriend at 3 a.m. and I'm the one driving. I dropped him off and it was just supposed to be a quick 10-minute thing, but his girlfriend parents woke up and now he's hiding in her closet thinking of a plan to get out. I've been driving around trying to waste time until he gets out, and just parked at some really sketchy place to type this out. There's nowhere to really go because of the whole virus thing, and I've driven by almost 20 cops at this point. I can't leave him at his girlfriend's house and go home because my parents will wake up to my dog barking and then ask where my cousin is. I also can't go to his girlfriend's house to cause a distraction because it's in a gated apartment. It's 4 a.m. now and it's also freezing. I might update this later if I remember. TL, Doctor, my cousin might have gotten caught sneaking into his girlfriend's house and I'm his ride. Update, it's 5 a.m. and we got home safe. Here's more details on what happened from his perspective. He climbed 3 balconies up to get into her apartment. His girlfriend's mom woke up and walked into the room. He hid in a closet and his girlfriend said she just woke up from a bad dream and thought she heard something. Her mom gets spooked and calls the dad. They search the place, so my cousin hides in a laundry basket, and it actually worked. Lamau. Her parents call security and he managed to leave as they were searching outside the apartment. The security guard heard him and started looking for him. I drove in and swooped him up and we got away safe. Update 2. Holy shoot, my dad woke up 10 minutes after we got home. There couldn't have been any better timing. DLDR at bottom. On mobile. Not my revenge, but I witnessed it. Back in 2004 we had those big plastic round garbage bins in our back alley, about 6 of them down every alley in my neighborhood. They were huge, about 4 foot tall, 4 foot wide at the top. They got emptied every Thursday around 8 in the morning. I lived half a block down the alley from the local bar, and every few weeks I'd go out in the morning to see all the bins knocked down. Some drunk idiot was driving his beater home around the time the bar closed at 2 a.m. I figured he was hitting them on purpose just for laughs. Once winter came, the plastic got more brittle and every bin that was hit got cracked and or destroyed. The city never did anything other than just replace the bins, but it would take a few weeks and it was irritating to have to pick them up all the time or use a farther away bin cause the nearby one was toast. So this continued for months, and winter gets cold here in Canada. We had a solid week of -40. One Saturday night I saw red and blue lights flashing through my curtains, walked out to see a completely totaled mid-80s Buick wrapped around a bin. One of my neighbors decided to fill the bin with water, which froze into a solid block of ice. I don't know for sure which neighbor did it, but they are absolute heroes in my mind. Guy got arrested, so I assume he was charged with drunk driving at the least. Tow truck took away what was left of the car, but the bin stayed there for a couple months as a monument to stupidity filled with ice cause it was too heavy to move and also wasn't in the least bit damaged by the collision. DLDR, drunk guy likes smashing empty bins with his car in the winter. Neighbor fills one with water. Water freezes, drunk guy totals car, gets arrested. A short one for you. Aussie here. Before the pandemic I had an English couple check in, and husband makes a request of me. Guest, this might be a bit weird, but can I ask you to do something for me? Me, hesitates at weird. Well, it depends on what the request is as to whether I can do it, but ask away. Guest, could you please just say 99? I heard someone say it a couple of days ago on a tour and I've been in stitches ever since. Guest's wife, Irel. Me, 99. Guest, face drops in disappointment. Oh. Me, well, I suppose you might have come across someone speaking a bit more casually, they might have said it more like non. Guest, face lights up, he chuckles. Yes, that's it. Guest's wife, Irel again. Guest walked away beaming with wife following, she probably having heard him make that request of a dozen other people so far that day. Anyone else have some interesting accent anecdotes to share? Tifu by not showing up on my virtual graduation. I guess technically the FU was a few weeks ago when I didn't submit the paperwork to be in the virtual graduation ceremony. I didn't think anyone would watch. Maybe it was my anxiety or I just didn't think anyone would care, but I didn't really think graduating from law school was something worth celebrating. My plan was to sit in my room and pretend the whole thing never happened. My friends found the link to my virtual graduation and shared it with everyone, including my family. My parents ordered a special meal and bought a bunch of alcohol. They made me wear a suit and take a bunch of pictures they uploaded to Facebook. All my friends were chatting about it in our shared groups. Everyone was so excited about it I didn't know how to say I didn't submit the form. They all sat there waiting for my name to come up and it didn't. Now I have to answer a bunch of questions about why they didn't say my name and if I even went to law school at all. DL, doctor, didn't submit the form to show up on virtual graduation. Friends and family now don't think I went to law school. Okay, so lately the teachers have been giving us work to do online and they gave all the kids in the middle school I go to a Chromebook. The Chromebooks cost around $500 each. The work the school has been giving us is not that hard, it is easy to do, etc. My friend hates doing school work, and so do I, but I managed to get through it. My friend would always complain about how hard the work is and how it is unfair how he has to do it. My friend recently got an email from his teachers saying that they want to meet him at school and check him Chromebook because he has been going on some sites he should not have gone on. He got all worried and started asking me if there is ways to get the Chromebook to turn off so it would not turn on again. I know my ways around tech and computers. I said yes. My friend asked me how? I said I can, but it would cost you. My friend cut me off and he said I will pay $10. I'm just thinking to myself on what my friend just asked and tried to make sure if he really wanted me to do this. My friend said yes. I wanted to clarify with him that if he gets in trouble then I am taking no blame. He agreed. My friend broke my Xbox in a fit of rage because he lost at a game, and he did not even apologize or even try to make up for it. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. I have a collection of USB killers. In case if you don't know what they are basically USB drives that can fry almost anything, making it not work again. I charged up one of my USB killers, and then I went to my friend's house. My friend was waiting for me, he paid me $10. I plugged the USB killer in, you could hear a pop when I plugged the USB killer in. I took the USB killer out, put it back in my pocket. The next day, my friend goes to school. It turns out he had to pay back $520 because of a computer that was thought to have been dropped in water. My friend was really mad at me. I told him that he said to me to get the Chromebook to turn off so it could never be turned on again, and that was what I did. Sorry friend, but you should have at least apologized for breaking my Xbox and acting like it was nothing. I'm living in Ireland where a national lockdown is only now just beginning to lift. I live in a shared house with four foreign lads who don't understand that there is a global pandemic happening and host parties in our home every other night. I've spoken to them a few times but they don't really care. Their reaction to it is that their loved ones aren't here so it's only their own health they have to worry about. There could be 20 strangers in the house on any given day and I've had to keep locked in my room. One of the guys managed to get a very large sum of weed recently from his dealer which he's now been selling on from our front room at a massive markup. Weed is very hard to find at the moment here. The party last night was the straw that broke the camel's back. So at 7 a.m., I packed up everything and left. Told my landlord the situation and told him to keep my deposit as I won't be paying rent. Grabbed a few things that I'd paid for including the TV and microwave, pettiness increasing, and just as I waved goodbye to my home for 2 years I went into the front room and stole all of the weed. I don't even smoke it but God it felt good. This happened about a year ago but I just created my profile. Also, I'm not native English. I, 22F, have been a snake nerd since the age of 12 when I received my first couple. Ever since, I bought and breeded many more. I especially like the common race of ball pythons since they can have many morphs and the breeding possibilities are seemingly endless. But I'm not here to write paragraphs about my passion. Different morphs come at different prices depending on their rarity and on genes, homozygous, heterozygous, whether the gene is dominant or recessive and all those things. Being a breeder implies that I need to take care of new babies once in a while, obviously. Therefore I need to sell a few animals as well. I'd like to quickly add that all this happens in Switzerland, where laws about domestic animals are pretty strict, especially concerning exotic animals, which is really great for their well-being. The story starts with this seemingly normal buyer interested in my silver bullet ball python. It's not a common morph but it's not too expensive either, CHF 250. I sold it with its terrarium to make sure about its living conditions, CHF 100 for the terrarium. The transaction went smoothly. Now, since I'm an enthusiastic nerd, I always want to make sure I don't miss any great occasion when it comes to other sellers. Therefore, I have an account on all websites where you can find snakes within the country. This implies all German, French, Italian and English written websites, and most pages, in Switzerland. 2 days later, I found my baby snake on one of those websites for triple the price. I was angry, but also powerless since the snake wasn't legally mine anymore. My petty plan to make sure to give this lady a hard time finding a buyer was to create a post as well on this same website, with the same snake, using a nice picture in opposition with her ugly phone taken one, with the same informations but a price slightly under the norm. This made all the interested buyers come go me first. I shortly explained to them what was happening and most found it funny. A few just blocked me but whatever. I also created new profiles from time to time to ask her if the snake is still available. She would start by ranting about how it's a rare color but I'm lucky and she feels generous so she'll give me a small discount, still very overpriced. I know I don't need to be worried about the snake's well-being because not only is a sick or malnourished python easily recognizably, it's also punishable by law. The chances of her losing all chances ever to sell it or to even have to pay more seem very low. I hope. The point is, it's been a year and the ad is still on this website. Smile. Edit, thanks for the snack award, D. Snack in question. Basically the title. Back when my husband and I were still engaged, I was working at Whataburger, and I went to clean the restrooms. My phone fell out of my pocket while I was scrubbing something off the floor, so I put my phone on top of the hand dryer. After I was finished I walked out forgetting my phone on the hand dryer. Not a minute later I went back in there and there were two girls leaning up against the sink just chilling and talking. I looked on the dryer and my phone wasn't there. I asked them if they saw it, and they said no. Of course I knew they took it, but I wasn't going to cause a scene especially during my second week on the job. I seriously don't know what they planned on doing with it. It was seriously the cheapest cricket phone there was available with only talk and text. I lived with my dad at the time so whenever I got home I used his phone to call my fiancé and let him know that someone stole my phone. He's like, yeah I know. Her name is Jazz. We've been chatting for a little while. Eventually he called her out about stealing my phone and she stopped texting him and ended up blocking him. Thankfully I got insurance on the phone. All I had to do was go to the store, let them know my phone got stolen, so they shut the service off on it and gave me a free one. I work at a small-town coffee shop that has managed to adapt and stay busy during COVID-19 by utilizing a window for walk-up service. A regular problematic customer, let's call him TJ, is a typical middle-aged man riddled with toxic masculinity. He often makes female employees and customers uncomfortable with his comments. Lately he's been around a lot, being typical TJ. Today he came to our window and ordered a coffee. Cool, nothing out of the ordinary. A co-worker asked him if he would like to tip via our Square register. We normally don't verbally ask customers, but with the current pandemic we are not allowing customers to touch our iPad system. He proceeded to tell her to put 100, and reassured them he wanted to tip that much because he appreciates our hard work and effort and wants to chip in since our business has been a bit slower. Okay, I gave him that and almost have a change of heart about TJ. We both outwardly thank him and he goes on his way. I text my boss about this uncharacteristic interaction with TJ and through their end of the register system she was able to look at the transaction. They noticed that not only was the credit card he used not in his name, but in his boss's name, on their company card. Typical TJ. What a D-bag. I worked at Target and right next door is Safeway. Went in during my 15 to get some food. This lady asks for help finding something. I have no idea where it is, and politely tell her so. I go about my business and she yells, "Who do you think you are? You work here, you should know where everything is." I said I don't work here and I'm on a limited break. She called me a liar saying you literally are wearing the Target red and khaki. She proceeded to call me lazy and how Target really lowered their standards hiring a slack ass like me. I said I know madam but we are in Safeway. SMH. But the look on her face was worth it. This happened like 10 years ago and I'm happy to report I no longer work in customer service. Long time lurker but I've never posted until today. I had the perfect diffa story unfortunately. Today I was redecorating my place and had to make many trips up and down the stairs. At one point I was walking down the stairs, lost my balance and missed 3 steps. I fell and immediately knew I badly injured my ankles. I sat there for a little while and tried to stand up so I could find my phone and call someone for help. I live alone. As soon as I tried to stand, I got super dizzy and the pain became even more unbearable. I sat back down and finally decided to try to crawl and find my phone, but of course I couldn't remember where I left it. I crawled around for a while until I found it. I finally called my cousin and our mutual good friend who were both planning on coming over soon anyway. They rushed over and tried to help me to the car and act as crutches. The whole way to the car and to the hospital I felt like I was going to get sick because the pain was terrible. I'm currently at the ER where I got some strong medicine, thank God, and I'm waiting for the x-rays to come back. The doctor is positive I broke my right ankle but he's not sure about the left. It might be broken but it could be severely sprained/torn ligaments. Either way he said I won't be walking for a while, which will be interesting since I live alone. It might be the pain medicine kicking in but I'm not as upset and freaked out as I was. Looking back it's a ridiculous situation and I'll try to make the most of it. However, I'm still crossing my fingers that the left ankle isn't broken and I'll be walking around again soon. Can't believe I finally got to write my first Tifa story, unfortunately, after only lurking for so long. Also, any tips for recovering from a broken ankle/injured leg is appreciated. This is my first experience having any kind of major injuries. And #X200B. DL, Dr. Tifu by likely breaking both my ankles when I lost my balance and fell down the stairs. At the hospital waiting for the x-rays to come back. First time posting. Currently a EMS dispatcher for a private ambulance company for 3 years now. We take some calls, however, they're usually seizures, psych, and falls. This one? Probably should have been psych, but unfortunately she wasn't the patient. This call happened in my first year, while I was pretty fresh and didn't understand the power of controlling a call. And #X200B. Me, okay, tell me exactly what happened. CLR, yeah, my mom fell in the other room. You know we have her locked in there right now, but yeah she fell and I think she may have hit her head. Me, okay, are you with her now? CLR, well, you see, she has dementia, and we live in a new home, so she is locked in there. You see, we can't have her wandering because of the bears that are around here. Me, have you gone to check on her yet? CLR, no, I can't unlock her door because she will get out and the bears will get her. Me, can you please go check on the patient? CLR, yeah, I think she might have hit her head. It sounded like she hit the end table. That's what woke me up. But even our big dog, insert large dog brand, is afraid to go outside because there are bears here at this new house. Please send the ambulance, but make sure they get in and out quick because the bears will get them. Rinse and repeat for literally every one of the 10 questions involved with a fall. I was essentially working with a third-party caller as she flat out refused to unlock her mother from the room until the imps got there, let alone even go look at her. And #X200B. I kid you not, I heard way more about these bears than I ever got out of her regarding her fallen mother. While I may have wanted to bash my head into the desk repeatedly asking her the questions, now I can have a good belly laugh over it. From what I do remember though, Mom was transported alright, and no EMTs were mauled by the darn bears. MIA Korean War vets. I have a question. I've seen in multiple places where DNA has helped to identify soldiers who died in the Korean War. My great-grandfather had a son who was Kia in North Korea, and I wanted to know, is it possible for me to give my DNA to help identify him, and if so, how would I go about doing so? It looks as if he was killed in action in November of 1951. What's the difference between killed in action and missing in action? If they know he was killed, why would he be unidentified? I found this information on this site. Also, Ancestry mentions he received a Purple Heart and a Silver Star and other military awards. Is there a way to find out what other awards he received? Or what he did to receive them? Thanks in advance for your help. So this happened about 2 years ago, and really was an incredibly, and thankfully, brief encounter, but it scared the bejesus out of me that day. I, 20s, was making my way home from the gym with my boyfriend and decided to get gas on the way. It was dark already, but it wasn't very late and we live in a pretty decent neighborhood. My boyfriend went inside to get snacks, and I stayed out by the car to watch the pump. Out of the corner of my eye I noticed a tall bald middle-aged man. He looked reasonably fit and was wearing somewhat raggedy clothes and had headphones in. He seemed to be staring at everyone else who was by their cars, scoping them out, and that was when I realized I was the only female outside. Now, I'm not a confrontational person and typically I try to aim for being as invisible as possible in uncomfortable situations, which is what I tried to do then. No such luck that time. He beelined it towards me. As he got closer I could see his eyes were kind of wild and I started willing the gas to pump faster so I could sit in my car. He came abnormally close to me, standing probably just a couple inches away from me, and asked me if he could ask me a question, even though he kept his headphones in. I said sure, in a tone that I intended to sound like please leave me alone. The man got even closer to me, looked me in the eyes, and without batting an eye said, "Why are women afraid of men who abuse them?" I am absolutely sure all the blood in my body went to my feet. I muttered something like I don't know, while trying to think of ways to get into my car or the gas station before this guy started swinging on me. He started ranting. Honestly I couldn't make out exactly what he was saying, but it centered around his mother and women and self-respect. He seemed completely unhinged and he seemed to believe his issues centered around women. Thankfully my boyfriend came out and as soon as he got to the car the guy left and kept walking down the road. Apparently the cashier had seen what was happening and told my boyfriend to cut the line and get outside with me. And now I never get gas myself at night. When I was in esthetician school we had a dress code of a black shirt with our school logo and a name tag we had to wear every day, but the logo was simple and large, it just took a glance. Even my name tag was small but the biggest thing was the logo. So, my school was in a different city than my boyfriend and I live in and he happened to work in the same city so we would meet downtown one night a week and have date night. One night we met at a thrift store and some man came up to me and asked where the sunglasses were. I told him I didn't work there and he just went on. Then literally an hour later we went to dinner at a place where they take your order at the counter and then bring it to you. I was up getting some condiments and some older lady comes up to me and says I didn't get my angel kisses. You need to get me my angel kisses. And since I worked in a restaurant at the time and had to always be nice to rude customers I absolutely loved telling her and just as rude of the way she spoke to me that I didn't work there and went on my way. Bartender at a local pizza joint. My buddy came in after a long day dealing with his 2 sick little girls. He tells me a story from today about the littlest. She's screaming for him from the bathroom. She states she's been waiting for 60 years for him. All she wanted was a cheese pizza from our place. Since they were sick he went with something more appropriate for upset stomachs. But you can guarantee I got him a gift certificate for a cheese pizza for her when she's better. Nice to have good customers to even out the bad ones lol. I worked in housekeeping in a hotel for months up until this past week. I'm now 35 weeks pregnant. I was scheduled to work 5+ days a week, with 20+ rooms to myself. I came into work recently, because I was on the schedule, and I could barely walk. I couldn't bend my back and my ankles were hugely swollen. I had been in L&D the night before to stop contractions. We didn't have many rooms, but 5 housekeepers in-house. Everyone was almost begging my manager to send me home, as we had too many housekeepers for the amount of rooms. Now, I'm huge at this point in pregnancy. I can't bend too far forward in general. My manager and I, discussed a couple weeks ago that she didn't want me cleaning bathtubs, so I was to have another housekeeper come clean my bathtubs. No biggie, I was fine with that. Well, the day before I quit I had went to find another HK to help with a bathtub. Said manager stopped us in the hall and asked what we were doing socializing on the clock. We explained that she was going to clean a bathtub for me and would go right back to her rooms. She yelled at me and said that if I can't do my job, I need to quit so that she can hire someone who's willing to work. I explained that it wasn't that I wasn't willing to work, rather that's one small task that I myself struggle with accomplishing. She didn't care. She continued yelling at me. Now, I've always hated being yelled at, so I spent the rest of my shift crying while cleaning my rooms. I got home from work, still crying. My boyfriend became extremely upset as I told him what had happened. We decided that it's in the best interest of our child that I just be done, as it's a lot of emotional trouble as well as physical. So I gave my manager her wish, and I went in and handed in my scrubs and quit. She seemed sympathetic, said she understood, was sad to see me go, and for me to come talk to her after I was released from maternity leave. Fast forward to today, another HK at said hotel was talking to this manager, while recording the conversation to send to me. She asked if I would be back after baby. The manager told her that I was lazy and a crybaby so she would never consider hiring me back. I'm glad I quit. I feel like I dodged a bullet. I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to convince myself to work in housekeeping again. I had recently moved in with my erstwhile boyfriend. He had no washer and dryer, so one weekend morning I drove over to the local laundromat. It was the one my boyfriend used, but I had never been there before. Not in the worst part of town. But, not in the safest part of the city, either. There were a number of people there, probably because it was the weekend. I did notice a man standing at the doorway. I'll call him Door Guy. Door Guy didn't have any laundry, soap, baskets, wasn't with anyone in the laundromat and didn't enter the building. I figured he must be waiting for someone. He was there a long time. I was folding my now dry clothes and probably appeared completely preoccupied with the task. My purse was on the folding table and within arm's reach. I happened to catch, in my peripheral vision, Door Guy walking into the laundromat. Without looking directly at him, I casually reached over, grabbed my purse and put it strap over my shoulder. Door Guy put his hands up, immediately spun around, went back out to the street and didn't hang around at the door anymore. I figured that I had just thwarted his purse snatching attempt. When I got back to my boyfriend's place, I told him what happened. I asked him if he thought Door Guy was trying to steal my purse. He replied, "I don't know. I would had to have seen it." Needless to say, that relationship didn't last, which was a good thing. So failed laundromat purse thief, let's not meet again. Obligatory not today but about 36-37 years ago. I recounted this story on another sub and thought it might qualify as a funny tifu. I was a 70s/80s kid and lived at a time when parents were more willing to leave kids at home alone than today. However, kind of funny/embarrassing story because I was probably 11/12 years old, as opposed say 6/7. I was laying on the sofa watching MTV while both my mom and younger sister were home doing stuff, lights on in an active house. At some point I fall asleep and start having a pretty vivid nightmare. I don't remember the details now, but I remember waking up and the entire house was pitch black, no one was home, and I was in that nightmare fog when you first wake up and can't quite figure out what's going on. And then I look over at the TV and I don't know what I'm hearing and seeing, but it freaked me the F out. I thought Lucifer was in my living room and there for my soul. Completely alone and panicked in a dark, demon-filled house, I run to the phone and call my grandparents, begging for their help. My grandfather stayed on the phone with me, assured me there were no demons, no matter how much I swore they were in the living room. A few minutes later my mom and sister walk in the door. They had run to the grocery store and had been gone a total of about 20 minutes. Oh yeah, the demons emanating from the TV were actually the new Thriller video which had just come out and I hadn't seen before. In my nightmare fog, waking up in an unexpected dark, Empty house. I somehow conflated it all together and got absolutely level 10 panicked for 5 to 10 minutes. TL, Dr. Tifu by falling asleep on the sofa while watching MTV, only to wake up a short time later after a nightmare and think demons have entered my living room to take my soul, so I call my grandparents begging them to come save me. One problem with the reopening is that Karens are much more likely to come out and currently make up a greater percentage of our clientele. I comfort myself with two of my favorite Karen stories, feast on them, so to speak, that are fairly similar. In the first, the woman was in charge of a business dinner for 10. We had no record of the reservation and she came unglued. It happened that a group had cancelled in our large private dining room. We set her up in there. She complained that the room was too large, although we'd drawn privacy curtains and their area fit the table nicely. I was called into the room where Karen proceeded to show with great drama, "I have proof of my reservation right here on my phone." My reply, "Ma'am, that reservation is for a different restaurant." I couldn't help but add, "Would you like me to call them and let them know you aren't coming?" Similarly, I had a woman insist that we had a certain wine. I was aware of the wine and I would have never had it on the list. After belittling me for not knowing my own restaurant and wine list, she too dramatically unleashed her coup de grace. She'd taken a picture of the wine list. My reply, "See that logo?" I pointed it out. "That's the logo for a different restaurant." I couldn't help but add, "But don't worry. We have much better selections than that and our prices are lower." My fellow restaurant employees, I hope you all have your own stories like these to comfort you. If you don't, just wait. A defining characteristic of all Karens is that they are idiots. I am 14. I am a certified referee in my state. I know the rules as I've played by them my whole life along with taking the officiating classes. At our park district, no headers for ages below 11. But in U12, it is up to the referee's discretion. So if it's a small tap it's okay. That is exactly what happens. So the coach behind me screams at the top of his lungs there are no headers in U12 5 to 16 times. I ignore him. Though I could eject him. It was last game of the season and I didn't care. After a bit of yelling, he says fine, go duck yourself then, which I turn and tell at him for saying in front of U11 kids. I wish I sent him away or ended the match. Sadly I didn't do much and my partner is a longtime referee, officiated my matches as I grew up, and he is deaf. So he has no idea what happened. The person who runs Park District in my area has been informed and is taking action. So last month the lady came in the drive-thru and needed her son's meds. She started the conversation with me by complaining about how we didn't give her the one that he needed and that she wanted that one filled and needed another on that he ran out of. Okay, we have the one on file I can get, but the other is 15 days early so I can do that. She says that he ran out because she didn't realize the directions were for a half tablet every day. So we need to fill them. The pharmacist refused and so did the insurance. She got the one we could get ready and she left mad that she couldn't get both. So, she overdosed her son on this medication because she can't read directions even though he had been getting this medication with these directions for a few months. I live in a college dorm room with my roommate. We decided that we wanted to move things around in our room right before the start of winter break. Our beds in the dorm can be separate to two individual beds or stacked together as one bunk bed. Me forgetting that I am super clumsy, decided that we could bunk our beds by ourselves without any problems. We successfully stacked the bed frames on top of each other, but when we started to move the plank of wood that laid on top of the bed frame and disaster struck. My roommate was beneath the bunk bed passing the wood plank up to me at the top of the bunk bed. My hand slipped and the board slipped through and fell to the ground. At first I thought nothing happened since she didn't say anything. But when I jumped down to see if she was alright she started screaming. The back of her ankle was covered with blood. Turned out that the wooden board had fallen right on her ankle and sliced a huge gash on one of her ankles. During the panic I couldn't find phone so I ran outside to find my RA who unfortunately was out taking a final. There was no one on our floor since most people left for Christmas break. So after running around for a minute I finally found someone with a phone and called the campus security. They called an ambulance and got her to the hospital to get 7 stitches. Big oops on my part. The bright side is that we got to ride the ambulance and she got fast pass to her seat on the airplane to board the airplane home the next day. Good thing she had insurance since the ambulance alone costs like $600. It happened a couple months ago and she all healed up. I still feel super bad for what happened. But hey, at least she'll remember me. TL, Doctor, I dropped a wooden plank on my roommate, we got to ride the 600 ambulance and she got stitches. Quick setup to my crazy life. Few days ago I quit my job out of the blue. This was after another of many heated discussions with my boss that melted into another round of him telling me I'm blowing things out of proportion and all the problems are my fault anyway. Yeah, okay Mr. Perfect, I'm out of here. We are talking a job where I was so miserable I would break down into tears at least once during my 9-hour shift. This is the first time in 20 years I have not had a job, so I was extremely terrified at my now uncertain future. After a lot of tears and second-guessing myself, I haven't got much sleep nor really wrapped myself around what happened, and I thought I would take this long weekend to think things over. Turns out my industry's gossip mill knows no boundaries, and this morning I got a phone call from another company asking if I would be interested in working there. Not my first choice, but any check is better than none, so I said yes to an interview today. I had been up since 3 a.m. at this point and was planning on taking a nap after having had a small breakfast and an energy drink. My local store didn't have my regular drink, so this morning I tried a new one. Now I am heading to an interview and thought I might have to do a drug test. That's industry standard, so I decide to fill up on a few glasses of water. This is where I made a horrible mistake. I put on my best clothes, pretty up my face and hair as best as possible, hiding the dark circles. I hurry over there and get right into the manager's office. It's a nice office, older furniture and 2 wooden chairs with plushy cushions. I sit on the first one, putting my bag on the other. We have a nice talk about my experience and what I expect, and while not everything I want, I wasn't completely out the door. It was a few dollars less, and I specified I want 1 to 2 days a week flex plus staying to my 9 hours schedule, and he didn't seem excited by these limitations. About 20 minutes into this, I suddenly have the urge to urinate. I have an overactive bladder, but I have been very careful lately and have been able to control it. One of those ways is avoiding certain energy drinks because they cause me problems. I did make sure to wear a small leak protection pad and didn't think I would have problems. I didn't want to interrupt him and just figured I could hold it. After a few minutes the urgency went away. I thought through all of my willpower. We talk for another 20 minutes, he shakes my hand at the end and we walk out. I turn to say thank you, and out of the corner of my eye I notice a small wet spot on the chair I was sitting on. I leaked right onto a light pink chair and it was so obvious. I am not expecting an offer. DL. Doctor went to an interview today and peed on the manager's chair. I broke my lease last month to move to a cheaper place. I was told that due to current world events, the lease termination fee would be waived. Great, I thought. I get to pocket the 1.5x rent I was fully expecting to pay and I would get my deposit back. However, due to smart person lingo in the lease, and Oregon law, I incurred a half-rent charge for not giving a 30-day written notice. This amount was deducted from the $800 deposit I was looking forward to having returned to me. Based on the wording in the lease, I was under the impression that the day you notify the landlord of the lease termination, you were expected to pay the fees and vacate the unit. I was very wrong, and now I'm out $552. Some lessons are learned the hard way. I gotta get smarter. DL. Doctor, I broke my lease without understanding the implications and lost out of the majority of my deposit. Not me, but witnessed my bar manager go through this. Customer, excuse me, I've been waiting ages and you served everyone except me. Bar manager, I'm sorry love, what do you want? C, I'm not your love. Stares. BM, I'm sorry, can I get you anything? C, I think it's awful how you ignore customers who have been waiting for so long. BM, I didn't realize you had been waiting so long, what can I get you? C, well, I think this is awful, 5 people must have come after me and been served. BM, I apologize again, I'll get you your drinks now, what would you like? C, for free? BM, sorry, I can't do them for free. C, why not? I've had to wait for so long, it's the least you can do. BM, I don't think it works like that, do you want any drinks or not? C, of course I do, why do you think I was waiting at the bar? But I don't think I should have to pay. BM, you can either buy a drink or stand away from the bar, I'm afraid, that's all we can offer. C, fine. But I don't want you to serve me. BM, why not? C, because you're incompetent, you don't know what you're doing. BM, well, everyone else here didn't serve you fast enough either, what difference does it make who pours your drinks? C, well, I've just said, anyone but you. Now get somebody else. BM, well, the other staff are busy mixing drinks, so you'll have to wait if you want them. C, are you kidding? Flip you. BM, flip me? I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Commence ranting and shouting followed by the bouncer escorting her out. Before I start, this isn't a pity me story, I'm fine. I want to share this because it was ridiculous. I'd met this guy, let's call him DG for delusional guy. I was 16 at the time, he seemed alright, and back then I didn't see the red flags as red flags. So naturally, when he started opening up to me about his abusive ex-girlfriends and how he was such a nice guy and they took advantage of it, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Boy, was I wrong. Fast forward to a year later, DG asks me out and I say yes. Over the course of 2 years, he started creating problems where there weren't any, all the time. He was always the poor victim, I was always wrong. Eventually it got to a point where he'd get mad for anything that didn't involve paying attention to him exclusively. Including sleeping. Always twisting it to make it look like it was the worst crime ever committed. He'd compare me a lot with his ex, let's call her Girl. Girl had supposedly tried to contact him again, but he didn't want anything to do with her because she was toxic and she cheated on him. Here's an example of him getting mad at me for problems he created himself. Once he sent me a random nude and I didn't want to anger him, so I reacted positively. And it became all about how he was a nice guy and I was treating him like a sex object. Few weeks later he sent me another nude, and since I didn't want to make him feel like a sex object I stayed neutral about it. And of course I was still a monster because I was making him feel unattractive and insecure. There was just no winning with him. I found a job in a fast food restaurant a couple years ago and I broke up with him shortly after since I was seeing normal humans again, and of course I could suddenly see the entire relationship was far from normal. Not only that, but I found out Girl hadn't cheated on DG. He had cheated on her. She dumped him and he tried to get her back throughout our entire relationship. So much for not wanting to do anything with her, and she's trying so hard to contact me. He was also actively cheating on me with another girl. After I dumped him, he begged me to give him a chance, but I said no. So he sent me a million texts whining about how he was such a nice guy again and he still cared even after how I treated him and I was a piece of shit. I just blocked him and refused to see him, so he started sending his friends. He is still in complete denial, and by now I'm probably another evil toxic ex who broke his heart in his feel-bad stories for his next girl. Obligatory, this didn't happen today. This happened a year ago when I 25M and my girlfriend 24F were out on a date. We were about 3 months into the relationship. So I was about to drop her off, but all of a sudden I had this weird idea that we should make out in the car, which we never did until then. Thank you hormones. We were making out and then both of us decided to move on to have sex. It was around 8 in the night, so we thought, flip it, let's find an empty street, where there would be no one. We were searching for a place and thankfully we did find a place near a lake. We were making out and she asked me to get the condom, which was in the boot, so I went searching for it and suddenly 2 cops who were patrolling the streets were behind me. I know I flipped up and that's it, we will be taken to the police station for counseling and all that. The cops knew what was going on and they signaled me to bribe them. So I jumped at the opportunity and bribed the police and we got out of that place. We were quite spooked and got the adrenaline rush. And the fear. We decided to go home, and that's when we thought maybe, if we try that again, this time somewhere else where there no chances of getting caught, and fast forward 30 minutes, we found a place. We started making out and there was a school bus beside us. It was empty, the place was dark and we were in full swing. Now we did see people passing by but no one really cared to look. There was some sound outside and also there was a couple who just got into that bus and were making out. Now that was reassuring. They left in 10 minutes, and in hindsight we should have as well. But we did not. Few vehicles passed by our car, we didn't care. All of a sudden we noticed a light being projected into the car and there they were, the police, again, and this time we were in the car half naked. I quickly got out of the car and stopped the guy who was actually filming this whole thing. After a lot of threatening and drama, we bribed him quite a hefty sum and got out of that place. Doctor, got caught by the police twice in the same day while having sex with my girlfriend in the back of my car. Note this is before the virus, so I finished dinner and have the great idea to go to Dairy Queen, so I order a large vanilla cone. When I get home I want to go through the back door to scare my dog. So I was sprinting towards the back door. Note that I have a walkout basement and there is a 10-chain leash hanging from my middle floor to make it easier to take him out. So while I was sprinting I don't see the leash and sprint right into it, and of course it is right at neck height. I almost hit my head on a rock. Luckily I didn't, but I landed hard on my shoulder and almost fully tore my rotator cuff, but luckily I didn't hurt my neck bad. But now it is hard to pick anything up, and to fix it I need surgery and my arm will be in a sling for a while. And yes, my ice cream splattered all over the ground. TLDR sprinted into a hanging leash in backyard and tore rotator cuff. TLDR, thousands of shop-level employees got laid off based on a computer algorithm the corporate office designed that doesn't factor in seniority and gives preference to certain employees. Store managers and corporate office employees were not affected at all by these layoffs. Please feel free to ask me any questions, I have lots of free time now. And #X200B. I work at Take 5 Oil Change, same thing as Jiffy Lube, for 5 years and was terminated yesterday along with 1,000 other lube techs. All the stores only have 1 to 3 people working there now. Nobody at the corporate level got let go, all the store managers are still working, and the rest was left up to a computer algorithm. I took pictures of our company's organizational charts in ADP before they locked me out, showing that corporate employees were not affected at all. The regional manager, who is in charge of over 60 stores, actually said that corporate's computers picked which assistant managers and lube techs would stay and which ones would be terminated with preference given to some assistant managers. I have no say in the matter. Apparently experience wasn't a factor in this algorithm. Lube techs who had worked there for more than 20 years got laid off while some techs who just started last year are still being employed. In the letter they sent out to everyone, they stated that all employees terminated will be considered for rehire subject to work history. They aren't even guaranteeing their jobs back, they're basically telling us we need to fill out an application again and hope for a callback. Does this seem pretty messed up or is it just me? How can a company lay off people so easily without care? It sounds like they are using the current events as an opportunity to clean house and start fresh with new people once things settle down. I can't imagine a company anywhere that lets a computer tell them who can stay and who can leave during a layoff. I think what bothers me the most is that I know very well the expendable shop-level employees are only getting laid off so the company can afford to pay the management and corporate employees. They still have 10 employees on payroll making $70-80K a year for unit growth and development. This company is not doing any growing or expanding right now, couldn't they let some of those people go? Thank you for taking the time to read, I just really wanted to vent my frustrations. If what they are doing isn't illegal, then it is certainly the shadiest thing I have ever come across. When I was 17 I used to deliver for a well-known pizza place in the area. Of course Fridays were always insane and this Friday was supposedly going to be the biggest. Halfway through the night I got to deliver to a home for a specialty pie with 5 toppings, the bill came out to $35, pizza was deep dish when given toppings so the price was always jacked up, and was hopping for another good tip to bring my night to about $50. As I'm walking up to the door I can hear them trying to shush their dog. Usually whenever this were to happen it was common courtesy for the customer to come outside to avoid any issues with their dog. Well they open the door and their 100-pound husky comes bolting out, jumps, bites my arm and then attacks the pizza. Luckily I was okay and very disoriented from the whole situation and wasn't sure what to do since the pizza was all over their front steps. They freaked out and continuously apologized. They informed me that they would call the store and order a new pie and pay for both and tip me extra. However they sent me on my way without ever paying me. My 17-year-old mind was still messed up from getting attacked by their dog. Getting back to the store I find out they never called and we couldn't find their phone number to contact them. Got bit by their dog and ended up not making anything after it all.